I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. We have breaking news, literally as we're just starting to record on Thursday afternoon, that the massive High Court case with the founders of Web Summit has been settled. Remind me, Niall, who is suing who?
Yeah, we have, well, three shareholders involved, two of which are suing Paddy Cosgrave. Um, so we have Dara Hickey and David Kelly, who have, I think, 12% and 7% of Web Summit, respectively, suing Paddy Cosgrave. Look, if you want an account of what's happening, I believe there's a book out there called Drama Drives Engagement by Catherine Sands. Um, yeah, go read it. That will sort of give you the good background on it. And as we said, in the spirit of all good settlements, we don't know what was agreed on.
Exactly. It's been well covered and stuff like that. The only thing that I noticed in the last day or two is at the start of the case, the judge went, I really recommend you sort this out yourself. And that's basically a judge going, if you come back in front of me with this stupid thing because you can't, agree between you, I'm going to make it painful for everybody. That's what the judge was saying. And today, settlement was reached, and as you say, we don't know the details. But I think the comment from Paddy Cosgrave was, "Yes, I'm very happy with it," and the other two were like, "Yeah, we're satisfied." So
Okay, that's as good as it
there you
gets.
go. There you go. That's all we know. Listen, let's get on to the other big tech story of the week, and then, of course, the Signal messaging app, which is kind of like a super secret version of WhatsApp. Apparently, in the U.S. government, they've been letting people in that they shouldn't. We've had
Okay,
journalists looking at what
right.
they're saying.
Well, look, as you know, I follow US politics quite closely, and it is a world unto itself, full of intrigue and rage and all the sort of good stuff that keeps us attached. It is good drama, and it does drive engagement. So what has happened is, I mean, we're all familiar with Signal. Signal is a self deleting messaging app, um, and what had happened was. Some of the people involved in this will actually, it'll give you a chuckle. So we have Mike Waltz, who is the National Security Advisor to the Trump administration. There is Tulsi Gabbard, who is the head of national intelligence. Uh, we also have John Ratcliffe, who's the director of the CIA. And on top of that, we have Pete Hegseth, who is the Secretary of Defense. And we've got a couple of other people. There's no point in going
They're
into
all they're
everybody
all
that was in the chat.
big names
So
though.
what happened was that Mike Waltz set up a thread, a group chat on Signal, which, as we know, is a consumer messaging app, in which he added all said people, all of whom are very, very important indeed. Amongst the people he added, and we're not entirely sure why, although we suspect why, was one Jeffrey Goldberg, who is the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, which is a fairly, highbrow magazine in the States. Wonderful tagline of no party or clique. However, Mr. Goldberg has been quite critical of Trump administration in the past, as in Trump 1, and he's not too fond of Trump 2 either. So the theory is that Mike Waltz added somebody with the same initials. There's somebody else out there who really should have been in on this group chat that
Yeah.
wasn't. And what was happening in the group chat was you had these people back and forwarding on military action in Yemen,
Hmm.
in particular attacks on the Houthis, who were, I suppose, interfering in passage of goods through the Suez Canal. And it's bad enough that you had people tic-tacking going, yeah, we should do this. Let's totes do this, with a side of, I don't think we should do this, but okay. Thanks to Vice President JD Vance, who was also in on the call. He was like, I'm not too sure about this, but look, I'll take your lead on it, I guess. Secretary Hegseth, um, who was like, yeah, and nobody's going to find out about this. Our operational security is locked down. Yeah, yeah, we're on special face palm territory here. Um, and of course, what happened was that a military action took place that was very successful by US standards. Um, However, Mr. Goldberg had the entire conversation screen grabbed, as one should do, as a good journalist. And initially, he wrote an article saying, I got texted these war plans. Here's what happened. I got added to a group chat. I thought it was like a hoax or something like that. Then people started talking, and I was like, oh, it's not actually a hoax. We better turn this into a story. And he certainly did. And in the story itself, he omitted certain parts of what was going on. There was a CIA agent operating undercover. Didn't name them. He didn't give out details of, the operations, what equipment was being used, what times were involved, all that kind of thing. Then what happened was after the story broke, basically the administration said, this is all a load of nonsense. This is a load of hooey. Don't worry about it. The Atlantic, it's total rag. However, Waltz, Gabbard, and John Ratcliffe were brought in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee on Wednesday. And, Wednesday. And this was meant to be, this was something that was scheduled anyway. They had to go. They weren't brought in just because of this article or this glitch, as President Trump called it. And they were appropriately pummeled over what the heck was going on. And one of the questions Tulsi Gabbard was asked repeatedly was, is this information classified? Was the information that was published in the Atlantic classified? To which she said, no, this isn't a big deal. This information was not classified. Which on one level is like, that's not a great deflection when you think about it, because you've just given license to somebody to publish all the messages. So what happened?
He's
They published all the messages, including, because Mike Waltz's initial thing was, oh, I don't know how this guy got in the chat. I think he hacked my phone, or my phone was hacked. You can see at the very start, the very first message, Mike Waltz has created a group and added you to it.
Do you know what?
They're not sending their best.
No, they're not. I think it's interesting from a tech point of view, okay, on this particular story. I mean, it's all politics and it's interesting, and especially for when you're not involved in it, you could say it's quite entertaining. But I think the lesson on a tech side of things is Signal is one of the most secure apps that you can get. It's encoded and all is encrypted. The message is self-delete and the whole thing. It's used a lot by political activists. It's used a lot by journalists. And as we can see, it's now being used by people at the very height of US government. But still, from the tech point of view, is the weakest point in the chain is the human being. And this is what we keep talking about, phishing. People asking questions, getting information out that way, or somebody making a stupid mistake. Somebody had a name similar to the editor of Atlantic magazine, and that's why he was added to the thing. I've done it before. I had a problem with somebody in a company, and I said, blah, 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 don't let that old bat hear about it. And I had an email back from the old bat going, less of the old bat, because I'd copied her in on the darn thing. So, not quite the extent of what we've been through this week. But it just goes to show, if you are looking after a company in security and the amount of data and stuff like that, it's so easy for a human to make a mistake.
It is, yeah. And also an object lesson. Choose your services. Make sure that you're using secure devices, and not personal devices. And,
I can bet that Telegram is not an officially endorsed device for the US government.
Yeah, Signal is not, it's not allowed.
Yeah, there you go. So I was right. I was taking a guess on that. There you go.
Yeah.
You can say that again. Oh, don't bother. Other news this week: Samsung Electronics. Now, one of the chief guys there has died suddenly. What happened to him, and who was he?
Yeah, Hang John-hee, only 63 years old, died of cardiac arrest. I mean, it's quite the shock. Kind of come out of nowhere. And at a time when Samsung really could do with some strong leadership. I mean, Samsung better than I do. how do you think the company is going to respond,
Handle it,
or how
no
the share
problem.
price is going to go, or
No problem. I'm sure the share price will dip because nobody likes bad news, and they especially don't like surprises, but it will recover. I was going to ask you because I don't know this guy at all, and I think it's funny because we know Steve Jobs is the person who came into my head, okay? Because Steve Jobs also died young, and I'm thinking about this guy also. It's kind of like when you get to that level, like when you're at that high in a global super company, is the pressure so much that your body is literally going to give in? His heart gave in. In Steve's case, it was cancer, I believe. And you know, all the money in the world can't save you. However, if you're asking, will Samsung die as a result of this guy? No, that might be a little blip. It was the same with Apple. Everybody knew that Steve wasn't going to be around. Steve was effectively Apple, is what they said. But Tim Cook was groomed, and Tim Cook stepped in, and it took a little bit of time. But now Apple is Tim Cook.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't think,
it's
but
a bit
the
depressing,
only
isn't
thing I
it?
think, oh, well, it's life. It's life. The only thing you got to remember with life is that nobody cares and everybody will move on. It's like they say, time is a healer, and time is a healer because nobody cares and everybody will move on. Am I being
Well,
cruel enough
what?
for you today?
No, one of the best pieces of advice about writing I ever got.
Yeah.
Nobody cares what you have to say, so go easy on them.
That's nice. I like that. Other news this week here in Ireland, we have
Eh.
the launch of a new digital radio service.
Now, you must be. Are you a combination of like stoked and cranky over this?
Well, full disclosure, I was very involved with DAB and trying to launch it in Ireland 10, 15 years ago. And I think the problem was myself and RT were very keen to get it going, but the commercial industry wasn't. And it possibly was a case of really good technology, but just not at the right time. And now I
Which
think we have
happens
a
a
case
lot.
of, yeah. But now I think it's a case of really good technology. Maybe the timing is better because the commercials are involved, but nobody else is. And that's the problem. And I think the world has moved on in the last, whatever, 10, 15 years. Not so much that radio is changing, but people's information sources and where they get their entertainment. And like everybody has Spotify now, everybody, or a YouTube subscription or Apple. So getting music is you get your own thing. News, you've got all
Okay,
the news apps
so
and you get your news information from there. So it's like, kind of, what is the role for radio? And in my mind, the role for radio is community.
well,
How now?
yeah, and it's something that you've said a lot, and that I agree with. The Irish are a nation of radio listeners. Um, so I mean, what's actually involved here? Because
Okay, so
you
what's
said
actually
in your
involved?
yeah,
Basically, a technical operator has gone to Comreg and has got a 12-month trial license to be able to try out the technology for themselves. And that's absolutely fine. The great thing about this particular one, Fulcha DAB are their name, and they have got the backing of some of the commercial radio stations, Wireless Group, who own FM 104 and Q102 and a whole load of other properties, are very much behind it. I believe that Bauer may be as trying it out as well by adding one or two stations, and I would imagine there's going to be a couple of independents in there. So we could have up to 20 different services. Now I don't know, but it'll certainly be more than 10 brand new services broadcasting around. Basically, they're hoping the signal will go from Wexford all the way up to the border at Dundalk, with the
mm,
main centre
okay,
of activity being in Dublin, of course. All right. Um, so that's the who. It's a 12-month thing. I would imagine, and I think it would be silly if they didn't, that it didn't become a 24-month thing. And then after that, if it's a success, which I think it will be, it will move on then to be more of a permanent thing. DAB has been very active in the UK, and it's done very well. Do you know that less than 25% of people listening to radio in the UK listen on FM?
wow, okay,
75% are either listening on DAB or they're listening on some form of online. So it's quite
okay.
incredible,
So
and it's a really efficient technology, actually. Um, if I was to explain it to you simply, you can imagine one transmitter sitting on top of a mountain, carrying one radio station, and say it costs 10,000 to operate for the year. Okay. DAB is a shared transmission system, which means that you can have up to 20 stations all sharing the same transmitter and the same technology and the same antenna and everything like that. It costs more to operate, but say it might cost 20,000 to operate a DAB transmitter versus 10,000 for an FM. But the difference is FM has one station, the DAB can have up to 20. Which means that the overall cost for everybody comes down. Now, there's a whole load of other technical kind of in and outs that I could give you. And I won't, because I'll probably bore you stupid. As you can see, even after 10 or 15 years, I'm very passionate
there's a couple
about
of
it.
things. Yeah, but there's a couple of things I want to know because, 15 years is a long time. So back then when the original DAB trials were happening, wasn't there, I mean, RTE were handling the content, but was RTE also owning the back end as well, or had that been spun out into a separate company?
That was RTE owned the back end of the first digital DAB trial, because they were the ones who were pushing it. And then a second trial and a number of other smaller trials came that were operated by independent operators, of which I was involved with one of them. And they ran also for a number of years. But part of your trial condition, certainly at the time, was that you were not to promote the trial with the general public, because the safety mechanism there is that you don't want them thinking, oh, this is a brilliant new service and I must go out and I must spend money on buying a brand new DAB radio. It's literally a technical trial. And that's what this is. But I think the big difference between back when RTE started was DAB was very new. So there weren't very many DAB radios in the country. Whereas now, anybody who has bought a radio in the last maybe 10 or 15 years, there's probably a DAB switch on it. And certainly with any car that has been bought new in the last 5 years as part of a EU directive, there is DAB built into the car automatically. So I think now the radio stations are coming along because there is a base of potential listeners.
Okay.
Next question.
So, yeah, this is DAB Plus, not DAB. So correct. Do I need to get a new radio? And what's the difference?
The difference is that DAB Plus uses a much better encoding technique. So they're able to squeeze in, say, twice the amount of radio stations because the encoding rate is much lower, but you're still getting very high quality audio. You would need to have a DAB Plus enabled radio. The vast majority of radios sold in Ireland in the last number of years will be DAB Plus. If you bought a DAB radio maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, maybe it's not. So you might need to get a new one. But as I say, they are available. I mean, Currys haven't stopped selling DAB radios, even though there's been nothing on DAB for the last 5 years at least. You can go out, you can pick one up. They can be very cheap. I've picked up DAB radios for a tenner. All right. Right. You'll certainly get something very nice for 50 quid. You get something very, very nice for 100 quid. It's not a huge buy.
Okay. Right. So here's another question I have for you. Now, we've been talking about, the back end. That's very nice. And we mentioned the content and the broadcasters that are going to be involved with. Now, what has changed to actually get broadcasters, commercial broadcasters, involved now? Is there a name out there that would make everything make sense?
In what sense?
Is there perhaps an oligarch who might be interested in funding broadcasting in Ireland?
Good question. I think back in the day, 10 years ago, there was one company who were very much against it. All right. And they were a large company. And because they were, it's like, woof, nobody was interested. Now, a lot of consolidation has happened within the Irish market. So you've got one company that owns FM 104 and Q102, Cork's 96, C103, Live 95. Then you've got another company that owns 98 FM, Spin, Today FM, News Talk, all of that kind of stuff. And they're all looking for opportunities. And you probably have noticed with your favorite radio station that they now say, hey, listen to Today FM 80s or listen to Q102 90s or whatever it happens to be. So they have these things in place as brand extensions. And they are consolidating, and as a consolidated business, they're able to do more across a wider platform, and they're taking DAB in as part of their thing. So they're kind of thinking, because DAB, national DAB broadcasting is ridiculously cheap in Ireland. Okay. If you've got a full national multiplex, you can have 20 national radio stations and the cost of broadcasting to the country will be negligible. All right. Well, it'll be very small compared to what you might expect. But you can absolutely run a brand extension business as part of that because you already have a lot of the other infrastructure because you've got studios, you've got sales teams, you've got programming people, you've got presenters, you've all of that in place. So why not just get a little bit more out of each of them? And for the sake of a couple of $100,000, create a new radio station.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well, I
that's my
mean,
thinking.
I was sort of being slightly facetious in talking about the oligarch, because also part of the trial
Mhm.
is the organization behind TalkSport, Times Radio, Virgin Radio,
Yeah.
which of course is news broadcasting, which is
Yeah.
owned by one
Rupert Murdoch. And Rupert
Rupert
Murdoch is
Murdoch.
not the person who was putting a break on everything 10 years ago.
We
All right.
can guess. We can guess
We can guess.
who it
Yeah.
was back then. But we have
So,
Murdoch money running at this time.
yes, we do. And why not? And it'll be, I actually think it will be interesting to see how it goes because at the time, you need four key things all to work for DAB to actually take off for the public. Okay. So you need the commercial broadcasters on board. You need your public broadcasters on board. You need your regulator on board and you need your manufacturers on board. Okay. So before it was the regulator was kind of half interested and RT or small independents were pushing it. Okay. The commercials weren't interested in it and the manufacturers are kind of, yeah, well, we'd stock the radios, whatever. Whereas this time around now you've got commercials who are very interested in it. RTE aren't. Because RT, as we all know, thanks to Mr. Tuberty, has got its own financial problems and regulation and stuff like that. I'm not saying he's responsible for it, but he was the straw that broke the camel's back. So now they're in a position where they're going, well, we don't have money. We're expecting even less money. We have to be very careful about what we do with our money. We have already requested that we end broadcasting on DAB and close down the DAB stations that we did have.
Yeah.
So they can't
and
really
took the ones that they liked online.
Exactly, yeah. They can't really do a U-turn now and go, actually, I think they should. I absolutely think and I think they should put RT Gold on it. But anyway, we'll wait and see. But that's why you still don't have the four key players all coming together. But maybe this trial will encourage that. We'll see. However, the trial is going on air, I would expect somewhere around Easter time, because of certain all kinds of paperwork that has to be done and stuff like that. And it's going to run for a year. And as I say, if you're anywhere on the East Coast, you should be able to pick it up, certainly in the Dublin area. And you can pick up a radio relatively cheap. Or if you've bought a car in the last 4 or 5 years, go through the buttons on the car because there is most likely DAB on there. All right?
Yeah. Was
Okay.
the first time around that the trial it was either DTT or DAB?
They were both together, you see. All right. So that's the whole experiment was with Sairview, and to get digital television up and running. And then there was a radio component to go with that as well. So they were both, the trial was being run by the Department of Communications and it was RT who were supplying the programming and the technical side of things.
Okay. Anyway, we could go on, but we've got a show.
I could definitely go on. I'll stop myself there in the interest of moving on to other big stories this week. Now, you had a really interesting one, all right? Because internet traffic stats, okay? When you're in marketing or you're running a website or whatever, you know, kind of the numbers are everything for marketing people. But I believe that you shouldn't trust your internet traffic stats for a very specific reason. What is that?
Well, I mean, a very specific time-sensitive reason. I mean, anyone that is in marketing, anyone that knows a little bit about analytics, knows that there are so many factors involved in making sense of your traffic. One of which is being able to identify which traffic is legitimate and which is automated, which traffic is bots. Now, spare a thought for software developer Xieso, Xeiaso. I'm sure I made bags of pronouncing
Doesn't matter.
that.
We'll just go with Chinese.
They're an open source software developer, and what has happened is that their website is experiencing effectively a running distributed denial of service attack owing to the interest of bots. And they have been trying all sorts of things. They have been trying introducing new challenges for browsers. They've been trying challenges to get people to prove they're human. And they just keep having to change the goalposts to maintain the integrity of their website. So, look, AI is being a scourge, not just in copyright, but also in web traffic as well, because everybody wants to train their AI on absolutely everything that's out there. And this is what's happening. So, if you find your website is sluggish or has an awful lot more traffic than you would expect on it, it's probably bots, and it's probably AI bots looking to make your life a misery.
All right. So basically, we're living in a world where nobody is on the internet at all because half the internet traffic is bots and the other half is porn. There you go.
On the internet, no one knows your dog.
Let me get you into another tricky pronunciation, because it's a Chinese EV maker who have been launching off in Ireland and showing off a flying car. Tell me everything.
Xpeng, because, BYD is legitimately doing very well over here. Tesla is not having a good time of it because it doesn't deal with competition very well, and they don't release an awful lot in terms of new cars. They sort of rely on what they have already. And the Cybertruck, which we will never see over here because the damn thing is too dangerous and too big for our roads. So, Xpeng, another brand that has arrived. Perfectly fine. However, one thing that they did bring with them to their launch earlier this week was a prototype of a flying car. Now, to me, I'm not a motorist. It's like, oh, a flying car, great. To you, as an aviator, if you see something like that, do you think, oh, that's interesting? Or do you think that's an accident waiting to happen?
Or do I think Blade Runner?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the answer is C, because flying cars are absolutely the future. I think, now I'm talking like 100 or 200 years time or whatever, but I absolutely believe in a future where you will have highways in the sky, and you will have cars or flying machines or whatever it is you want to call it, will be following those highways, and people will be on and off and stuff like that, and it will make traveling an awful lot more pleasant and faster. That's what I think. The flying car that they were showing is essentially a car, a combination between a car and a drone, from what I could see. But do you not think that future is possible? You've got to look at me like, oh, God, there he goes again.
I'm
Crazy
just
man.
trying to think of the logistics. Like, what is considered a safe distance to fly at? How does this affect?
Right. We have 100 years of aviation that tells us about these things.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm just trying to think of, things like flight paths and acceptable heights, all that kind of thing.
All of that kind of stuff. The one thing that and I think the computers will definitely get there, is how the machine is going to interact with the atmosphere, because the atmosphere is always changing, and we can predict it to a certain extent, but we can't control it. So, you might be kind of thinking to yourself, all right, I'm going to fly down to Cork on Friday, okay? But on Cork on Friday, we could have, low-hanging thunderstorms across the entire route. It won't make for very pleasant fly driving or whatever it is, So I don't know what they're going to do about that, but they will get there. I have no doubt that they will get there.
You're very sunny on this. Fair enough.
I'm very sunny on this. I don't think it's not something that's going to happen maybe in our lifetime. But then again, or maybe at the end of our lifetime, it'll be starting to pick up. But I think it'll happen. I think it'll absolutely happen. Then another thing that I think should happen or will happen is automated motorways. Because if we were able to adapt the actual motorway infrastructure that we have at the moment to take self-driving cars, where you could literally just get on the motorway and then you just sit back and watch a movie as you're driving down to Galway or whatever. I think that's absolutely there, because it's a controlled environment. Nobody can jump on except at junctions, and you have to jump off at certain junctions and stuff like that. So that could be another. I'm normally the tin hat man, aren't I? Now I'm just a crazy man.
You're all about blue skies this week. That's nice.
All about blue skies. So anyway, I was delighted to see that car and to see them launching it in Ireland. And then the other thing about, you were talking about flying cars, we have drone delivery services now.
It's true. Yeah,
You know,
and one of the companies, Mana, just raised, I think, another $30 million dollars, I think, this week.
yeah,
So there's certainly
to be able to do
appetite,
it. So there
for what they
certainly is.
do.
Very good.
See what I did there?
Last story this week. We're all used to AI generated images, and they have a certain look. You've got a story about that this week.
Yeah, something that has really annoyed me as a fan of cinema and the craft of animation and the level of care and attention that goes into hand-drawn animation. Um, this is about Studio Ghibli. This is the studio behind Spirited Away, My Neighbor Totoro, Pompoko, Howl's Moving Castle, The Boy and the Heron. Iconic, beautiful stories. Wonderful pieces of animation. And its founder has, came out in 2016, Hayao Miyazaki, and said on the subject of computer generated imagery, I am utterly disgusted. If you really want to make creepy stuff, you can go ahead and do it. I would never wish to incorporate this technology into my work at all. He also said, I strongly feel this is an insult to life itself. Now, I'm going to add a caveat to that. I mean, not all of Ghibli's stuff is hand rendered. There's a few little bits of CGI plopped in just to, give things a tweak at certain points, right? It's not, they don't do photorealistic motion capture or anything like that. So, they're things very much hand drawn first, CGI to, make appropriate edits that can't be done by hand or would be too costly or take too long to do by hand. Now, with the release of OpenAI 4.0 images, they actually have a filter that can make any image look like it is being done by Studio Ghibli.
Ah, that sounds very cool to me.
No, to me, I would consider this a betrayal and a vile misunderstanding of Ghibli's style and their values. I mean, I mentioned before that their animation is absolutely beautiful. It's stunning. And part of the experience is the kind of stories that go behind it as well. Sort of stories that engender a feeling of, purity and wonder, kind of a child's view of the world. To see that style debased and brought down to meme status, I think is just, it turns my stomach a bit, to be honest. And Sam Altman even converted his Twitter avatar into a Studio Ghibli version of himself, and I'm like, just you jerk. I don't like it. I think it's disrespectful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there we go now, dear listener. This is what we have learned from today's podcast, is that Dusty's head is in the future and Niles is in the past. Old man.
Yeah, I'm going to shake my fist at a cloud. The cloud that you're delighted about.
No. Listen, I think you absolutely have a point, all right? Because, the way I look at it is that the artist and the creativity and the talent is not being affected by these things. It's that the tools are changing. But you still need that human artistry in there in order to make things. And as you were talking, I was kind of thinking another example is when Kindle came along first and electronic books. And the amount of people I know, oh no, I'm not having that, blah, 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 whatever, But actually, we still need people to write great stories. We still need people to write, kind of biographies and stuff like that. And we still need that content. The fact they're delivering it in electronic format, so what, what if, kind of the guys at the Ghibli studio started using that very AI to improve what it is that they do? Would you be happy with that?
It's their choice.
Oh,
That's their choice. If that's how they want to present their work, it's
nice
their
going.
choice.
If you put your pen down and stop drawing, I'm out. Man, you're hard to please. Listen, last little thing. Tell me, Apple Worldwide Developer Conference date announced. What is it?
Yeah, June 9 to 13. As far as we're concerned, it's June 9th. That's when we're going to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
We're all expecting iOS 19. The
Yeah.
advance buzz is that it's going to get a new interface, but,
Yeah.
grain of salt. We're into rumor mill territory.
I know, but the reality will be that the corners are slightly more rounded. That'll be it. Niall, thanks for keeping us up to date with the news.